Good evening, dear friends. Uh, at the outset, I would like to thank the Indian Psychiatric Society Central Zone for providing me this opportunity to discuss about a really important issue, that is the polysomnography and its relevance to psychiatry. And in the later section of the talk, we will be discussing about how to read or decode a polysomnography report. We all know that sleep problems are common in psychiatric disorders. We all prescribe psychotropic medications, so they can also give rise to certain sleep disorders. There are certain sleep disorders which can actually masquerade psychiatric disorders, and at times we are not able to diagnose them because we are not very well versed with those kind of sleep disorders. So, in this talk, we will discuss about all these three important issues. Then we will move on to look at the sleep study or the polysomnography and different types of it. Then finally, the most important section, how to decode a report of the sleep study if a patient brings to you. So if we look at the status of the sleep disorders in DSM-5 or ICD-10, you will find that DSM-5 has included all sleep disorders, including the sleep-related breathing disorders or what we call as sleep apneas, in the section of mental disorders. Now, this actually suggests a change in the US, where most of the psychiatrists now they are going for the fellowships in sleep medicine. But if you look at the ICD-11, it has actually removed all the sleep disorders from neurology, mental disorders, pulmonology, and it has given a separate section to sleep disorders. It is actually a welcoming move. It shows that sleep medicine is a specialized branch, and the people from different specializations, for example, the psychiatry, pulmonology, neurology, general medicine, pediatrics, physiology, any one of them can develop themselves in the sleep medicine and become a sleep physician. So this is the status of the sleep medicine or sleep disorders as per the prevailing diagnostic classification systems. Now, when we talk about the sleep problems, we see the patients who are suffering from mood disorders, psychosis, anxiety disorders, ADHD, dementia, delirium, addiction, and we all know that sleep is an integral part of these kind of problems. But unfortunately, many of us are still following the ICD-10, and they feel that sleep disorders or the sleep complaints they are the part of the core psychiatric disorder. But if we go with the latest classification in sleep medicine, that is the International Classification of Sleep Disorder, third edition, if we go with the DSM 5 or the ICD 11, you will find that sleep problems are not merely a symptom of other disorder. If the condition is prevailing, if the condition warrants the clinical attention, that we consider that the sleep disorder is that the sleep complaints are actually an independent sleep disorders and they require a separate diagnosis. So there is a need to bring a change in our understanding in our say dealing with the sleep problems in all the psychiatric disorders. Now, if we look at the relationship between the insomnia and psychiatric disorders, you will find that the literature suggests that the insomnia doubles the risk of depression. And this was a meta analysis. Moreover, if we look at the another meta-analysis which was published recently, it shows that insomnia increased the odds for the depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse, and psychosis. And probably there are multiple explanations which are given for this kind of relationship. First, the insomnia could be the initial symptom of the deranged pathophysiological network that happens in the brain in the course of these disorders. Secondly, it is possible that many of the patients they start consuming alcohol just because they are dealing with the insomnia on their own. So they develop alcohol abuse in the future. Similarly, patients with insomnia, they have daytime tiredness, they are inability to concentrate, they are not able to focus their attention, they at times become really irritable, and all these symptoms they can actually masquerade the symptoms of depression. So there are a number of theories which have been put forward, and this is clearly an area which requires further attention. Now, if we look at the obstructive sleep apnea, which is actually an important sleep disorder, and say most of the sleep studies are done to either diagnose or treat this obstructive sleep apnea. So you will find that nearly one third of the patients with the with the major depressive disorder, one fourth of the bipolar disorder, and nearly 15% of the patients with schizophrenia, they have comorbid obstructive sleep apnea. Now, the further studies suggest that when you treat the obstructive sleep apnea, then the symptoms of the depression they improve. The course of the bipolar disorder it also improves, and as far as we talk about the schizophrenia, certain other meta-analysis they suggest that the prevalence can vary between 5% to as high as 91%, depending upon the population and the other characteristics of the study population. Then, if we go with this meta-analysis, it suggested that it was only the high BMI which predicted the occurrence of the obstructive sleep apnea in these three psychiatric disorders. And we all know that obesity is one of the major risk factors. Minded friends, I'm saying risk factors for the obstructive sleep apnea. Now, if we talk about the antipsychotics, because these are the most commonly prescribed medications for the management of psychotic disorders, and we often have a plethora of patients who are suffering from psychotic disorders. So we all know that certain antipsychotics they produce the daytime sedation, so patient may present as hypersomnia. Then it is also known that antipsychotics they induce weight gain. Not all, but I mean some of them, for example, olanzapine, risperidone, are especially high in terms of weight gain, and by inducing the weight gain, these antipsychotics they actually increase the risk for obstructive sleep apnea. Moreover, it has been found that these antipsychotics they induce some kind of neural changes, which in turn influence the stability of the upper airway muscles, and these upper airway muscles then become pliable, and they actually collapse easily, especially when a person is falling asleep, because that is a time when the muscle tone is already reduced. So that produces a choking, and then that can lead to obstructive sleep apnea. Now, this meta-analysis shows that antidepressants they can produce non-REM parasomnias, for example, sleep talking, sleepwalking, confused arousals, sleep terrors, sleep-related eating disorders, nightmares, and REM sleep behavior disorders. So it is important that we prescribe the antidepressant, and when we see the patient in the follow-up, we always ask about these problems. Now, lastly, we will discuss about the sleep disorders which can masquerade psychiatric disorders. And one of the common disorder is restless leg syndrome. Now, person with restless leg syndrome, they actually primarily complain of an urge to move legs. Now, this urge is usually associated with some kind of dysesthetic sensations in the leg muscles, or at times in 50% of the patient, arms can also be involved. So these patients they complain about some creepy, crawling, itching, tickling sensations in the leg muscles or the arm muscles. Now, these sensations they are usually present only in the evening, or in the advanced disease they are present during the day, but they become worse in the evening. These sensations they usually appear when the person is quiet and say in resting position, and as soon as the person moves the legs or massages the leg, or say they keep on stretching their leg, these sensations they disappear temporarily. Now we did a small study in our own OPD and we included the 99 consecutive subjects who were complaining of the insomnia, generalized body pain, that is the chronic fatigue syndrome, and the generalized fatigue. And we found that all of them they were actually suffering from restless leg syndrome. They were given a number of psychotropics, but they were not improving. And that was the reason we thought of an alternate diagnosis. So, friends, if you are having such patients who are not improving despite optimal dose, optimal treatment of the therapy, look for the alternate diagnosis and you will find the answers mostly in the sleep disorders. Now, this another study which was published in 2012, it shows that 70% of the subjects with RLS they actually present with insomnia, and they also complain of anxiety and depression and hypertension, and they are at times misdiagnosed only as the case of anxiety or depression with hypertension, and we often prescribe them the antidepressants which can in some cases actually worsen the course of the RLS. And these patients they are not able to work well, they are engaged in the frequent work absenteeism, and that leads to a high economic burden. Now, why do patients with RLS they complain of these kind of problems like daytime fatigue and nighttime poor quality sleep? Now, if you look at this epoch of the 30-second, which was taken from a patient who was suffering from RLS, you can see here the person is in the stage 2. You can see K complexes here, and along with these K complexes, you will find that this person is having certain arousals, and these are actually the micro arousals. So these person they wake up for a very brief period lasting less than 15 seconds in their sleep, and which is usually associated with the movements in the leg. So these are known as periodic limb movement during sleep, and this is known as an arousal associated with periodic limb movement during sleep. And because of these arousals, the patients they complain of poor nighttime sleep, and when they are not having a good quality sleep at night, they often complain of daytime tiredness, loss of appetite, loss of libido, loss of interest in the daily activities, and which can be mistaken for depression. Now, coming to another patient who complains of sad or irritable mood during the day, who complains of generalized body pains and generalized fatigue during the day, and has inability to concentrate on his work, poor attention, memory lapses, and at times he complains that he is not able to sleep well. Though the bed partner report that at times they found him sleeping, but he says that when I see myself, I'm not sleeping at all. So what do we diagnose? Depression. Now, the moment I ask about two more symptoms at night, do you snore at night? Do you snort at night? I asked the bed partner, did you ever see that he stops breathing at night while he's sleeping, or have you noticed that the pillow becomes wet with the saliva in the morning? Suddenly, your diagnosis changes to obstructive sleep apnea, and that is the reason that the studies have shown that many of the patients whom we diagnose actually as depression, they suffer from obstructive sleep apnea, and it remains undiagnosed. Now, these patients also complain of poor quality sleep. You can see here a 2 minutes epoch from a patient suffering from obstructive sleep apnea. You can see here the airflow is reducing. In addition, you can see here that oxygen desaturation more than 4%. Here you can see the patient has stopped breathing for more than 10 seconds in one go, which is associated with the desaturation and is also associated with the dense EEG, and which depicts the microarousals during the sleep. So these patients who are suffering from obstructive sleep apnea, they also report of poor quality sleep at night, and they show the symptoms which are suggestive of obstructive sleep depression during the day. And unless we ask about the other nighttime symptoms, we keep on treating them as the case of depression rather than obstructive sleep apnea. Now, once we diagnose that the person is suffering from some kind of sleep disorder, the next thing that we have to do is to do a sleep study. Now, coming to the polysomnography types, so we have three different kinds of polysomnography in practice in India and even abroad. So, one is the type 3 studies, and second are the type 1 studies. What are type 4 and type 2? We will discuss later. So you can see here some of the machines, the Apnea Link by ResMed. You can also see the machine from the Somnomedic, also from the Cadwell. Now these are the machines which actually record only the respiratory flow, the respiratory effort from the chest and the abdomen. They record the oxygen saturation throughout the night. Many of the these machines, they record ECG at night, and also they record the body position. So you can see here these machines are quite small, handy, but they actually record only cardiorespiratory parameters. So you do not get any idea about the total sleep time, arousals during the night, whether the person is having certain kind of periodic limb movement during sleep or not. So when you look at the type 3 or home sleep apnea testing machines, these are cheap and affordable, so you can purchase these machines within a cost of say 3 to 4 lakhs. The sleep study can be done at home. You can see these days many of the manufacturers or the distributors, they are approaching you to get the study done at home, and you do not have any access to the raw data. But there are certain disadvantages with this machine. These machines, they are good only for diagnosing the sleep apnea, and they cannot diagnose the other sleep disorders, as we have seen that we get the patients who are suffering from poor sleep quality for number of other reasons. So you cannot diagnose those disorders. Now one of the major issue is, since these machines, they do not have the EEG, so you calculate the AHI or the apnea hypopnea index out of the total recording time rather than the total sleep time. Now, in certain conditions, it is possible that the person has wore the machine for 8 hours, but he has slept actually for the 6 hours. So, in those cases, you will get the AHI, which is actually lesser than the true AHI. So that is the reason you can get both false negative as well as false positive reports with these machines. Coming to the level 1 PSG, the level 1 PSG, it records the audio and the video if it is done in the sleep laboratory. If you are using the same machine at the patient's home, it becomes the level 2. It has the EEG channel, so we usually record the 6 channels of the EEG as per the AASM manual for the sleep scoring and the sleep data. And we record the 3 channels from the EMG, 2 channels from the legs, and at times we expand the channels wherever we are suspecting the sleep-related movement disorders or the parasomnias or sleep-related seizure disorder. So there we expand the EEG channels to the 24 channels. It also records the body position, and in addition it also records all other parameters that can be recorded by the level 3 polysomnography. So you can see here you are recording a plethora of other data which can help you to diagnose any kind of insomnia, hypersomnia, the sleep-related movement disorders, sleep-related seizures, the sleep-related breathing disorders. So you can diagnose all sleep disorders using level 1 polysomnography. But the problem is, if you are using the same machine and if you are recording the data at the patient's home, at times what happens, some of the leads, they fall off because the patients, they make movement in the bed, And since the sleep technician is not available along with the patients to fix the leads at night, so it leads to a huge data loss. So the data loss is a major concern with level 2 and level 3 studies. Now coming to the level 4, in level 4 study we record only and only the oximetry data for a whole night. So again, this can be used for the screening of the obstructive sleep apnea, but is not able to diagnose any other sleep disorder. So next time it is really important that when you are suggesting a patient for the sleep study, you either send him to a established sleep lab, and at the same time you should be sure about the type of the study that they are doing, whether the technician is staying there whole night or not, and also that what are the clinical diagnosis for which you are sending the patient for. So these all data should be with you. So, considering the different kinds of sleep disorders which are prevalent in psychiatry, you now understand that it is actually the level 1 machine which is important for us. Level 3 machine or the home sleep apnea testing can be say advocated in a limited number of patients who are suffering from only sleep apnea but nothing else. Now coming to the reports. Now I am showing here one of the reports that you get from the home sleep apnea testing. So this is the report which was submitted to us by one of the person who is doing the home sleep apnea testing to look at the conditions. So in the top part you can see here it contains the patient data, it contains the name of the treating physicians, it contains the name of the referring physician, it contains the date of birth of the patient. So you get to know about the age, you get to know about the BMI, so that you can see whether the study could be false positive or false negative. Then it also shows when did the recording start and when did the recording end, and it shows the total duration of study. Then it also shows the start time of the evaluation and the end time of the evaluation and the duration of the evaluation. Now here you can see the recording was started and it ended at the same time, yet we had the 12 hours no, I'm sorry, I think it's the AM and the PM. So yes, it shows that the recording was continued for 12 hours even when, and we are not sure whether this coincides with the patient's sleep time and the wake time. So this is something that we need to look at. Now, the second part of this report, it shows that the evaluation period was 3 hours and 48 minutes and the oxygen saturation was evaluated for the 7 hours. Now, this is slightly different because say both are the respiratory parameters and they should have been evaluated for the same duration. So based on this information, this evaluation, you can see here the person is having the AHI which is 15, that is he is having mild OSA. If you know, if you look at the respiratory disturbance index, again it is very difficult to say how to calculate the respiratory index from and in this patient. Now, again, you can see here the apnea index. You can see here obstructive sleep apnea, the central sleep apnea index, the mixed apnea index. So these are given differently. You can see here that the most of the events in this 15 are actually the hypopneas, which were diagnosed as the flow limitations, and then you can see here the oxygen desaturation index. Now it becomes really difficult that when the oxygen desaturation index is just 4.1, how can the hypopnea index can be 12.4 in in the absence of EEG data? Because if you look at the recent definition of the hypopnea by the AASM, it mentions that hypopnea event is an event where you can see 30% reduction in the depth of the respiration or amplitude of the respiration, which is associated either by the 3 or 4%, whatever figure you are picking for your own laboratory, desaturation in the desaturation, or is associated with an arousal or the micro arousal. Now, if we divide this 4.1 from this 12.4, then we have to have the 8 events, 8.3 events per hour, which should be associated with arousal. But mind it, friend, it is a level 3 study where we are not recording the EEG. So, this is actually a report which requires a confirmation through the level 1 study. Now here you can see the pulse rate, the minimum was 40 beats per minute and the maximum was 173 beats per minute. Now this is something which is common in the patients who are suffering from obstructive sleep apnea, because during the apneic spells they have the parasympathetic arousal, so that slows the heart rate, and during the resolution of the apnea there is a sudden sympathetic surge which leads to tachycardia. So here you can see the average number of breaths per minute that you are seeing. Then also you are seeing certain apneas which are unclassified. Most of the apneas are obstructive, and you can see here the number of the total hypopneas. And you can see here the number of desaturations were 32, so it was 12 hours divided by 32, or if you can see here the evaluation period was 7 hours and 47 minutes. So if you divide 32 divided by 7.75, so you get this figure 4.1. Now here you can see the saturation less than 90 was 21%. So you can also see that the person was having the desaturation below 90%. This is something which is important because this can at times lead to pulmonary artery hypertension. Now, if you look at the hypnogram, you can see here the person is not having any breathing event during this period, and you can also see some loss of this is actually the pulse rate. You can see here the pulse is moving up and down, so this actually shows that the person was probably having the obstructive sleep apnea and hypopnea events, and this goes with the pulse. Also you can see the sawtooth pattern here in the saturation, and this actually also goes in concordance with the diagnosis of this sleep related breathing disorder event, whether these are obstructive apneas or obstructive hypopneas. But you can see here the loss of data at this period, and at this period you can see a huge loss of data because the technician was not able to fix the electrodes and the leads when they got dysfunctional at night because of the patient's movement. So you get a huge loss of data, and that can actually lead to either false negative or false positive reports. So next time whenever you are prescribing or advising for the home sleep apnea testing, please give a look at the report and try to see whether the report is justified or not. Secondly, here you can see these are the events which are marked as the flow limitation, but actually these events are lesser than 10 seconds in duration. So actually the scoring for the hypopnea should have been started here and continued till here. So instead of these 4 events, they should have been the 1 event. So you can see here the person has not scored the data manually, and this is probably a computer generated report, and which is actually falsely escalating the AHI index and showing that the patient requires the, probably some kind of intervention. Now coming to the reports, what we do in our own sleep laboratory. So these are the report by the sleep level 1 sleep laboratory. So here you can see the report starts with the patient's name, patient's ID, the gender, age. We also mention the BMI. So here you can see the patient is obese. Then who is the interpreting physician, who is the referring physician, who was the technician who recorded the data, and who is the person who scored the data. Then indications for the study. Now at times what happens, the patients, they are not able to sleep well wearing all those electrodes, and they actually spend a long time awake. So this is known as the first night effect in the sleep laboratory. So in those cases, actually it is important that we repeat the diagnostic sleep study on subsequent night. So here the patient had the first night effect, and that's the reason we repeated the diagnostic sleep study consecutive night, and this report shows the data of the second night. And then we have mentioned the study protocol, what all electrodes were put on the patient's body, at what places, how did we do the scoring of different events, whether these are the sleep stages or the arousals or the leg movement or the body movement or the apnea events and any other kind of respiratory disturbance. So we mentioned everything so that the person who is actually who has referred to us, he knows and he can make the person understand about the nuances of the data. Now, the second part of the report starts with at what time the lights were switched off and at what times the lights were switched on in the morning. So it shows the total recording time. So this total recording time is the time from light out to light on. Then it shows the total sleep time and the sleep period time. Now you can see here the sleep period time is slightly longer than the total sleep time, because the patient must have waken up from the sleep for some time. So here you can see the patient has woken up for 15 minutes from the sleep. So if you add these to the sleep, the total sleep time plus this wake after sleep onset, you can see here, you will find this number, the sleep period time. So we know now the patient has spent around 20 minutes awake after starting the recording till the end of the recording. And here you can see the total 6% of the time was spent awake in the night. Now, once we did the lights out, the sleep onset was started um after say the almost the same time. So patient was too sleepy. So here you can see the sleep latency was almost 0 minute. Another possibility could be that the sleep study was started slightly later than the usual sleep time of the patient, and that can also lead to the very short sleep latency. Now it shows that the REM sleep first appeared after the 85 minutes of the first sleep epoch, and that is important in the cases where we are suspecting narcolepsy, because in narcolepsy and certain sleep say deprivation conditions, this REM latency can be very short. Now, the another part shows that the percent proportion of the different sleep stages. So here you can see the non-REM sleep. So the person is spent 3% time in the N1 sleep, which is quite acceptable, because the say limit for the N1 sleep is 5%. We expect a person to spend around 50% of the time in the N2 sleep. So it is also normal. You can also see that the person has spent slightly greater time in the N3 stage, that the deep sleep, which should have been somewhere between the 20 to 25%. And also you can see here the REM sleep is slightly lesser in proportion than acceptable. It should have been somewhere around 20%. So this has been taken over by the N3 and N2 stage. So this shows that the sleep architecture is slightly disrupted. Now, again, you can see here, lastly, the sleep efficiency, which is 94.2%. So this is really something which is important. Any sleep efficiency above the 85% is considered good, but as we have discussed, that the many of the patients, they are not comfortable in the sleep. So in those cases, the sleep efficiency can be poor. On the other hand, at times we also see reverse first night effect, and this is common in the cases of chronic insomnia, because they are able to sleep better when their sleep environment is changed. So there they report that they have a better sleep in the night. When we ask about their sleep quality subjectively, in the morning after the sleep study. So please pay a look at the sleep efficiency. Now, the next part of the report, it talks about the arousal. So it shows about the arousal index at night, total arousal index. Then these are the arousals which are ascribed to the sleep-related breathing disorders. Whether we talk about SRBD, can be either obstructive sleep apneas, various kind of central sleep apneas, or other sleep disorders. Many of the patients who are having the periodic limb movement during sleep, they also have associated arousals, and these are known as the arousals associated with PLMS. Many of the patients, they have arousals around associated with this snoring, and these are basically the spontaneous arousals, and these can be found in the patients suffering from insomnia. So any arousal index beyond 10 is considered abnormal in adults. Now the next part of the report, it actually shows the respiratory summary. So we get the counts of the apnea during non-REM, during REM. So you can see here the central sleep apneas, they were 4. You can see here the mixed sleep apneas, they were 3 during the non-REM sleep, and we could not see any central apnea or the mixed apnea during non-REM, but we could see one mixed apnea during REM. And also you can see here obstructive sleep apnea, the count was 50 during the non-REM, but 18 events were observed during REM sleep. And if we talk about the total number of apneas during sleep, the count was 68. Similarly, when we talk about the hypopnea during REM, we could observe 28 events during non-REM sleep and 1 event during sleep. So total is the 29. And the definition that we have followed is the 3% or greater desaturation associated with the event. Now, some of the laboratories, they prefer to use 4% desaturation. So you have to pay attention to this thing, because this can also change the total AHI what we are seeing here. So you can see here total events of the apneas, total events of the hypopneas. So you can see here the apnea index and hypopnea index, and this is the total of hypopnea and apnea index. So this 19.8 shows that this person actually stops breathing at least for 10 seconds 20 times a minute. Also, you can see here that the hypopnea index is greater during the non-REM, and this is actually not uncommon, especially in the mild to moderate OSA, because during REM there is a profound atonia in the body, which also involves the upper airway muscles, and these muscles, they become flaccid and they collapse. So that is the reason many of the patients, they actually complain of high AHI during REM sleep compared to the non-REM sleep. So if we go by the REM sleep, you can see here that the REM sleep, REM AHI, it falls in the category of the severe OSA. So that shows that this person actually requires some kind of treatment, because the REM AHI, high REM AHI has been found to be linked with the cardiovascular as well as the hypertension. Now again the respiratory summary again continued. Now we should know that many of the patients, they actually have position dependent sleep apnea. So whenever they are sleeping on the supine position or on their back, they have the AHI which is higher on the back, but it becomes less when they take the position to the left or the right. So here you can see this person, if you look at the apnea index, it is 80, and it reduces to 53 when he takes the turn during the night, during the sleep. And it is during REM sleep. Here you can, now this part shows that the apnea index during non-REM sleep is much higher on the back compared to the lateral position. Now, these four figures shows that the person, they develop the profound atonia during the sleep, and that is the reason the AHI is not much different depending upon the position during REM sleep. Now, if we look at the total index, you can see here the AHI on the total AHI on the right is 16.2, but if the person is sleeping on this supine position, it is severe, that is closes nearly to 70. Now this shows that when the person is sleeping on the back and is on the not in the REM sleep, then he has very high chances to suffer from the obstructive sleep apnea events. So this person actually requires the therapy. Next part of the report, it shows the oximetry data. So when the person was awake, he was maintaining this oxygen saturation to the normal. Average saturation during REM was also 97%. During non-REM, it was 97%. That means this person did not have much of the desaturations. But if you look at the desaturation index, you will find that these are basically the total desaturation index is 16.5. That means if we look at this person might be having predominance of the apnea rather than the hypopneas, because for the definition of the OS, these obstructive apneas or the central apneas, we do not require desaturation. And you can see here the longest desaturation was for 27 minutes, 27 seconds consecutively. The next part shows the average saturation during the REM sleep, during the non-REM sleep, and the number of desaturation. So here you can see the number of desaturation events were higher during the non-REM compared to the REM, and the index was, again, if you look at it, was higher during REM compared to non-REM, because the person spent lesser time during in the REM sleep. Now, the next part shows that the person did not have the hypoventilation and Cheyne-Stokes breathing at night. This is really important, because especially for the patients who are also having the obstructive hypoventilation, the obesity hypoventilation syndrome, or OSA, which is overlapping with COPD. Next part of the report shows the total number of limb movements during the night, total number of movements during sleep, and number of movements associated with the arousal. So here you can see the limb movement index is 12.1. But if we look at the limb movement during sleep, these are just 6, which is within the normal limit of 10. The average heart rate was 86 beats per minute. The highest was 182, and say the if you look at the bradycardia event, there was one event of the bradycardia. So this, but we could not find any other events during in the ECG. Now, this is something which is really important, because many of the patients, they suffer from cardiac asystole at night, and that leads to recurrent arousals. And these patients, they often come to you with the complaints of either the poor quality sleep or the insomnia, and they are frequently misdiagnosed as depression or chronic fatigue syndrome, or at times with the somatoform disorder. So this is something which we need to pay attention to. If you look at the hypnogram, this actually hypnogram shows the sleep stages during the night. You can see here the heart rate throughout the night. You can see some sawtooth pattern. You can see here oxygen saturation. So you can see the sawtooth pattern, which increases at few periods, and these periods, they actually you can see here, they coincides with the periods of the sleep-related breathing disorder events, whether these are the apneas or these are hypopneas. Moreover, you can see here that the patient is in the supine position or is in the REM sleep during these events. So you can see, so this shows that the person is having REM dependent as well as position dependent sleep apnea, and so in this patient we will not pay attention to the total AHI, but we will actually pay attention to the AHI which is seen during the supine position, as well as the AHI which we have seen during the REM sleep. And if the person is suffering from either some kind of psychiatric disorders like depression, somatoform disorder, or suffering from any cardiovascular morbidity, or suffering from excessive daytime sleepiness, or any other morbidity like diabetes mellitus, stroke, then this shows that it is a clear indication to treat the patient, because as I have already discussed, the REM related sleep apnea has been found to link to cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. The next part of the report, it shows the observations. So we decode what we have discussed so far so that it becomes legible to a general physician or the referring physician. And then we give a diagnosis that the person is suffering from here moderately severe OSA, moderately severe OSA, and the REM sleep and supine position dependent OSA, which then turns into the severe OSA, and then we give the recommendation, whatever it is. Uh, for example, in this patient, we have recommended that the person requires the manual titration with the PEP. Now, during the manual titration, the patient has to undergo and wear all these electrodes along with a mask on the nose, and through this mask we deliver the air with the room air with the pressure, but in certain cases we also add oxygen, and then we gradually increase the pressure till we do not observe any of the respiratory event or the arousal. So here you can see we have started on the pressure of 4, because this is the lowest pressure from which we start the manual titration, and we gradually increase the pressure, and we kept a watch on the apnea and hypopnea. So here you can see the events, they disappeared and the pressure of 8, but then again reappeared at the pressure of 10. Now, in this case, it is important to understand that the only 4 minutes and 7 minutes were spent on these pressures, so this is something which is not reliable. The patient spent around 20 minutes at the pressure of 10, and still had the AHI primarily in the form of hypopneas. So we further increased the pressure till 15, and the patient spent almost 6 hours in this pressure, and had a sleep of 270 minutes, and also the REM of 47 minutes, and still did not have any major event. So the AHI event index, AHI came to 0.2. So we have prescribed a pressure of 15 to this patient. Now this becomes more clear when you look at the hypnogram. Again, this shows the sleep stages throughout the night. Also, you can see here the sawtooth pattern in the cardiac event, sawtooth pattern in the SpO2 till this part, because the pressure was gradually escalated, and when the target pressure was reached and the patient was in the supine position, here you do not see any kind of the events which are present in the pressure below to this. And also you can see here the sawtooth pattern in the ECG as well as the oxygen saturation, it has disappeared. That means the patient was breathing normally at this pressure. So this shows how to do the titration study and how to know that whether the titration has been done adequately or not. Then in this report we mention what are the findings that we see during the titration, and this is something what we have discussed so far, and then we have recommended that the patient should wear the CPAP while sleeping at the pressure of 15 centimeters of water, and depending upon the patient's sleep onset latency, we prescribe the REM limit. So friends, it is important to understand that as far as possible prescribe the manual PEP instead of the auto PEP, because a number of studies have shown that auto PEP is not good for all the patients. We don't have the data regarding the safety of the auto PEP, And then the patients who are suffering from coronary artery disease, from the strokes, who are having ischemic strokes breathing, who are having COPD or any other pulmonary disorders. So as far as possible, go for the manual PEP. So with this, I would like to end my presentation here. Thank you very much for your patient listening. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.